King Charles and Queen Camilla are in Canada's capital, Ottawa, on a visit Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney says will underscore the nation's sovereignty. Mr. Carney has invited the King to open Parliament this week. It's the first time a monarch has carried out the duty since the late Queen Elizabeth 68 years ago. US President Donald Trump has repeatedly expressed a desire to annex Canada, a proposition fiercely rebuffed by Mr. Carney. For more on this, I'm joined by University of London constitutional expert Dr. Craig Prescott. Good to have you with us, Craig. Now, firstly, how significant is it for King Charles to be giving the speech for the speech from the throne, something that's been more recently done by Canada's Governor General?
Yes, hello, it's good to join you. Yes, it's hugely significant to see the King do this. It's the first time in 50 years that the monarch has delivered the speech from the throne in person. Elizabeth II last did this in 1977, if my memory's right. So, it's also the first time that the King is in Canada as King of Canada. So there's a lot of symbolic meanings to this visit and the sight of seeing the King deliver the speech from the throne in the Canadian Parliament.
Now, has this trip been in any way triggered by the threats from the US president to make Canada America's 51st state?
Yes, I think it's, in a sense, been entirely triggered by that. I think, speaking to people in Canada, I've been sort of quite taken aback by how seriously they've taken Trump's 51st state rhetoric and how threatened they feel by that. And, this was Mark Carney's sort of trump card, if you excuse the pun, to sort of show Canadian sovereignty, to show Canadian nationhood in a very visible way, but in a way that the American sort of administration can't really challenge. Because at the end of the day, it's the King of Canada opening the Parliament of Canada, but that makes the point sort of perfectly.
Yes, and given what you've just said, might this also either wittingly or unwittingly pull the British monarchy into global politics, given the massive events happening around the world, namely the uncertainty that stems from the Trump administration and the two wars that are happening in Ukraine and Gaza?
Yes, we've already seen how the King has, for example, over the war in Ukraine. Political opinion here in the UK is fairly solid on a sort of pro-Ukraine basis, and the King is able to express that because that is, in a sense, the official position of the government of Britain, but that's broadly shared across politics. And so the King can sort of engage in politics in that way. And similarly, he's doing the same in Canada in many ways. That the broad political position in Canada is that it's not the 51st state. And so he can express that. And he's doing that by, literally being there and delivering the speech from the throne.
Yes. And in talking about issues concerning, global politics, is that a bit of a shift from the reign of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II?
I think there's a sense that he's more willing to engage and to engage more sharply in politics, while staying clear of party politics. But there's sort of politics with a small p, so to speak. And I think we've seen this with his speeches as regards the, excuse me, my phone's just gone off. He's seen this as regards his speeches in state visits that he's undertaken in Italy and France. There's been a sharper political content with those. And it's sort of, and I think we're seeing this again with the King here. There's a sharper political content without sort of engaging in party politics.
Yes. And how do you think, the British royal family and King Charles more broadly are regarded by Canadians?
There's a genuine question, as there is in Australia, about whether you should have, a king that lives in London, thousands of miles away, as your head of state. It's a historical position. It reflects the history of Australia and Canada and the other realms. And as to whether Canada as a nation, a highly successful nation, shouldn't have a Canadian citizen as its head of state is a genuine question. But what we're seeing today is that there is a value in having the monarchy. There's a value in having the king. It's something different. And in Canada, at least, it distinguishes it from America. And in a sense, that's what today is all about.
And do you think, given the context of the trip that's not been made too public, would that help to fortify the monarch's continued status as the country's formal head of state?
Yes, I think it's a reminder to Canada, sort of particularly given this rhetoric from President Trump, that the monarchy's there, the monarchy is different, and perhaps it can play a useful role in Canada, and that it's a little bit more than a figurehead, that there is some substantive content, a substantive idea behind having the king as head of state, and that is of value to Canada as a nation. And I think, in a sense, Trump has sort of thrown all this up in the air. And I think, surprisingly, one of the things that stuck is it's shown the value of the monarchy to some people in Canada, particularly to Mark Carney.
Well, on to the speech itself, Dr. Craig Prescott, many thanks for your time today.
Thank you. You're welcome.